All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Podcast 83, the podcast put on by the Michigan Association of Counties. Thank you to DTE for sponsoring. I'm joined by Deena, Bosworth, and Meghann Keit, both from the MAC staff. Happy International Women's Day to both of you, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well deserved. I hope everyone had a nice weekend, enjoyed a nice Spartan win yesterday. Sorry, U of M fans, but we needed it a little more than you did. So we'll take it. We got some nice fall spring weather rolling through, so that's kind of nice. We'll see how long that lasts before the snow comes back. But Deena, let's go ahead and get started. Why don't we first off, let's touch on the American Federal Rescue Plan that was passed this weekend by the Senate. And Dean and Meghann, you can chime in on this too. But Deena, why don't you start us off a little bit on what that plan, what does that plan do as opposed to the other plan and where we're at with the process?
Well, I think it's been, a little bit of back and forth and nothing that's been, solidified yet at this point. So the House passed their version, which when broken down was what, $65 billion for counties out there. We were told that the Senate version was going to drop that down to 60 billion, but it didn't. It didn't. By the time it got out of the Senate, it was back at the 65 billion. So we're back to the original numbers. One thing, though, that I believe is new in the Senate version as they passed it is another $1.5 billion to go out to all counties that have public lands, so that get PILT payments from the federal government. Still not sure quite on that distribution, but that's how that's laid out. We are looking at expending the funds between now and December 2024. They can be used for revenue recovery, basically. So if you have lost revenue due to the pandemic, you can show that. One thing that we talked about, I want to say it was last week and maybe again in our legislative update, you're going to see a lag in reduction of revenue from a lot of the property tax revenue that you're receiving out there. So the fact that the federal government is recognizing that and giving you an extended period of time in order to spend these funds, I think is a good thing. Currently in there, they're saying half now, half within a year. So whatever it is your county allocation is going to be, you'll get the first within 60 days. You'll get the second, within 12 months after that. Some of the provisions on what you can spend it on. Now, again, we're going to have to wait for the Department of Treasury to provide detailed guidance. But right now it says you can help your small businesses, your revenue recovery. You can put it into water and sewer and broadband infrastructure if you want to. Just a lot of different options on how you can expend those funds. In addition to that, they've still got another $10 billion that's going to go out to each individual state for broadband. And I want to say that's like a minimum of $100 million per state. And then the allocation is based on, how rural you are, population, those types of things. So lots of money out there. It's a huge relief package that is going to be a big influx of dollars into every state. So
yeah, really an unprecedented investment in local governments is really a way to look at it, and especially when you start adding in the broadband component that I know a lot of our counties are focused on. Some good opportunity there. I think it's important to note that it is an option. The county doesn't have to take these funds. They can not take them. They can take a portion of the funds. I think there's provisions in there to allow for help for small businesses, nonprofits. I know one thing we're working on is some best practices that we learned from some of those counties that received the CARES Act funding to put out to our members so that they can have some ideas on what they can use these funds for. In addition to that, I know in our upcoming conference at the end of April, we're planning to have a breakout session on this topic as well to try to help those counties out that aren't used to using these kinds of funds to help their communities out and what some ways are to do that. Meghann, did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
Just, to comment, I think it is really broad and what these can be used for, but I know there's also been already questions circulating on OPEB pension being something that maybe could be supported on this. And I think, there's a lot of guidance that still needs to come out, but a lot of the discussion early on was something that wasn't going to be supported by Congress when they were putting this through. And so I think, that's not really their intent there, but otherwise it's very broad in what we can use it for.
Right.
Yeah, they're talking about $195 billion in money to the state, which I know Megan's going to talk about the state supplemental in a minute, but that's a huge influx of money into the state too, and they are prohibited from using it on pension and OPEB obligations.
And one thing we'll have to watch too is to make sure that the state doesn't decide to take funds away from locals because they've got this influx of funds. And
yeah.
I know there were some discussions about this, and I don't think we've had a chance to go through it enough to determine whether there was language put in the federal package that would prohibit the states from doing that. I know we were hopeful for that. I think there are some other states that it's already starting to creep up a little bit. I've heard it from other association execs across the country that it is starting to be talked about. So I think that's something we'll have to watch.
Yeah, I think they're putting in there though a provision that the states can't reduce their revenue, their tax revenue, to offset whatever money they would get from the federal government. But you're right, I don't think that means that they can't necessarily take it out on us. So
right.
For sure watch that.
Right. All right, moving along. Oh, and before I forget to, if you do have questions, feel free to type them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. Meghann, why don't you talk to us a little bit about the supplemental here at the state level that finally got finished last week. We're moved through the state legislature and where we're at with that.
Yeah, definitely. So the state had received federal coronavirus relief funds last December. Since then, they've been in negotiations between the Senate and the House, of course, the governor's office, trying to figure out how to allocate that money. And last week, the House and Senate did come together with a plan that has $2.3 billion to support small businesses and various programs and property tax relief programs. There's also money in there to maintain the increase on the direct care worker wage from $2 an hour. That actually increased to $2.25, and that would be through September 30th. There was additional funds in there to support emergency rental assistance. There was money, $110 million, I believe, for continued coronavirus vaccine administration support. So pretty large dollar amounts. And then also $2 billion of the federal education money was sent in a bill to the governor's desk. All of these do come with caveats, of course. So within the spending for the business support, vaccine distribution, all of these sort of things, the legislature did tie up $347.3 million of that to Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1 would essentially limit the Department of Health and Human Services ability to issue those public health orders beyond that 28 days. So unless the legislature were to approve an extension, the DHHS director could not issue those public health orders. And so, Senate Bill 1 is not actually enrolled yet. The House had to wait the 5-day rule, so the House should be voting on that this week, and that would be tied to funds in that supplemental. So it's unclear what the governor is going to do with that one. And then also on the school spending, there was also a bill that tied local health departments could close schools for in-person instruction or halt sporting events, a lot of the high school sports. So the local health departments could do that, not state health departments. And so again, that was tied to about $800 million in that spending bill. So, that wasn't supported by DHHS. It wasn't supported actually by the Michigan Association of Local Public Health or the schools. So again, I think it'll be interesting this week once the bills actually get presented to the governor, what she might do with the power of veto and how that all shakes out.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to that a little bit about what are her options as far as vetoing goes with this sort of bill, because there's some options that only allow for full veto. There's some options that allow for light item vetoes. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so within the supplemental bill, there's a number of different line items and spending items, and so those individual items can be vetoed. And then, the bill itself that would change the policies, so the Senate Bill 1 or House Bill 4049 could also potentially be vetoed by the governor as well. But again, then that spending wouldn't move along with it. So she really has to weigh whether or not that $800 million towards schools or $350 million towards, I believe is epidemiology labs, needs to be supported now. If that can wait, be part of another legislative conversation, another supplemental that's likely to come because all the federal money was not allocated this time around. So there will be continued conversation about that.
So it's basically the legislature is trying to get the governor to either send out less revenue or less money out to locals and school districts, but give up some power or give up power, right? Like if less money or you give up power, she has to choose.
Right.
That's just kind of their way, I think, of trying to insert themselves in the decision-making process. So, I mean, I think we kind of think she's not going to sign Senate Bill 1, which would limit her power, but wait, see.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously really interesting, especially with new department director that still hasn't been confirmed yet by the Senate. So really interesting dynamics right now.
Yep, absolutely. All right, moving along, as we kind of move through March here, we're approaching an important deadline with March 31st coming along. That open meetings issue that we've been talking about does have a kind of one of the deadlines is the end of March. Deena, you want to touch on a little bit where we're at with that? What do we see coming down for that in the upcoming months? We've got a lot of positive news out there about vaccines. We've got more vaccines available for, the age has been moved down to age 50 now. So we're starting to see more and more people get vaccines, which is good. What are we looking at as far as March 31st and open meetings?
It's still, there's no reason virtual meetings until the end of March. After the end of March, you have to be operating under a state of emergency in order to have strictly virtual meetings. We've seen some legislation introduced that would address this. Even just last Thursday, I think it was, Senator Wayne Schmidt introduced Senate Bill 207, which would extend that deadline for no reason virtual meetings out to the end of June. But frankly, the legislature has no desire to extend that out at this point. I don't think that I should not say the legislature. I should say that it is not the majority opinion that deadline should be extended in order to have these no reason virtual meetings. We've talked to, members in both chambers, and they just don't have the appetite to do it at this point. It's not set in stone that they won't, but I think we're just kind of stuck with either you adopt your own local state of emergency or you start meeting, according to the DHHS, occupancy orders, and you're going to have to account for that somehow. So.
Yeah, well, that's, the important component of that is most county chambers can accommodate those commissioners and support staff that are there. The problem becomes public accessibility, right? And so that's where some sort of call-in virtual option will be necessary in order to accommodate the public's participation in those meetings, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to accommodate for it.
Right. All right. That's kind of the topics we had. Why don't we talk a little bit about some of the meetings and things like that we'll be hosting coming up. Deena, you want to touch on a couple of those real quick?
Yeah, Monday we've got our county summit coming up. This is something that we implemented, 2 years ago now, Steve?
Yeah, 2 or 3. Yeah.
2 or 3, yeah. And this is where, the other executive directors and then advocacy staff, so whether it's, their lobbyists or whatever, that represent county government, they all come to the MAC office and we talk about what our priorities are, what our common issues are, and how we can best work together. So, for Meghann, you've got what, judges and prosecutors and sheriffs that come, correct? Yeah, and we've got clerks, treasurers, register of deeds. So who am I forgetting?
Local public health.
Local public health is coming. Yep. So it's a good roundtable, and I think we all look forward to just hearing from them on what their priorities are, what they're working on, how we can help, and how they can help us, and where the commonality is. It's all really just about stronger together.
Right.
Stronger together.
And
And then-
Thursday, we have our second county administrator meeting as well. So we're doing those monthly to really kind of, I think, get a little bit more in the weeds or get more feedback on certain issues that are a little bit more in the weeds and going on in the at the county level. I know last month we talked about PFAS and foreclosure issues. So we're going to continue those coming up this Thursday.
And of course, then we have our MAC conference virtual, of course, this year, end of April, April 28th and 29th. We met last week and put together some of the breakout sessions. It's going to be a 2-day conference. Most of the content will occur between 9 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. You should be seeing some more information come out on that, but some of the issues we're going to be talking about are labor issues post-COVID, new legislative programs on materials management, medical examiner data. Also, there's going to be kind of a legislative terminology 101 put on by Meghann and Deena. So you'll see more and more information coming out about that in the next coming weeks. So with that, Derek, do we have any other questions?
We sure do. Vaughn up in Bay County, always ready with a question. I saw in MERS this morning that redistricting may be moved back to February, finalizing in February. Any comment on that? And this is referring to the state redistricting commission process as opposed to county apportionment.
They have to do what they have to do, I guess. I mean, there's not really, we can't really change that timeline or make a difference there, but it'll be interesting to see how everything shakes out at the end. I don't have any other comments. Do you have comments?
No, I don't.
Just to follow up on that, we will have a workshop at 2021 Legislative Conference on county apportionment, the process of drawing the lines for county commissioner districts. And that's handled separately from anything the statewide redistricting commission is doing. So be sure to register for the conference for that. Okay, questions from Pam Gibson. How are counties absorbing the work to allocate funds to different entities? Are they using in-house staff? This might actually be a better question for our upcoming county administrator call.
I mean, I think if you're talking about the federal funds and how they are distributing them out to businesses and nonprofits and things like that, I know in those counties that received first round CARES Act funding, a lot of them used consultants to do that. So they had a contract with the consultant. The consultant dealt with that rather than internal staff. And I think that makes a lot of sense when you're looking at the amount of the dollar figures you're talking about and just the logistics involved in distributing those funds. But we are hopeful to have, again, at our upcoming conference, a presentation on that. That should be helpful. And we're also hoping to put some best practices together for counties in the coming weeks as we get more and more visibility into the guidance and the guardrails that are going to be on these funds.
Okay, next question from Michael Newman up in Sheboygan County, asking about action and final process on 4-year county commissioner terms.
We're working on it. We were just having this conversation earlier today. Senator Ed McBroom has the bills again. He has put in the request to the Legislative Service Bureau. Senator McBroom is going to partner with Senator Moss in order to get them introduced and referred to committee. We were trying to get the bills taken up in committee before spring break, the legislative spring break, which is at the very end of this month. But given the fact that we don't have the drafts back yet from the Legislative Service Bureau, I think that's going to be quite a task. But it's still our intention to run them as early as possible out of the Senate Local Government Committee, right when they get back from spring break.
Yeah, I think we'll this will be one that we'll have to, get everyone amped up on and get the membership making phone calls on again because, for whatever reason, it's just a tough bill to get passed. But we did get it pretty far last year, so we'll continue to work on it this year and next year as well.
Okay, great. That is the end of our questions for this week.
All right, great. Deena, Meghann, any closing remarks? All right.
Go green.
No?
All right. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, thanks everyone. Thanks to DTE for their sponsorship. Of course, if you have any questions between now and next week's podcast, please feel free to reach out to any one of us and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.